the property in question. And as you'll note, these are existing oil and gas wells in and near the city of Gardner. You'll see, I mean, it's just amazing to see all these different wells. And the owners have taken steps to have the property examined by a geologist, petroleum engineer to determine the presence likelihood of presence of oil, given that it's located all around the property. One of the things that's different this time around from the last time we were in front of this commission is that the property owners are not going to get this property subject to a long-term lease. We're not going to be bound by somebody else controlling the property as far as the oil operations. The owners want the ability to terminate the oil operations as soon as the property can be sold for development, and that will probably occur when the area and the economic factors switch from really being an oil or an agricultural type of property to development for the residential area that the city has planned. Not having a lease on this property will allow the owners to make those decisions immediately, timely, and be able to allow this property to be developed. Right now, the owners are only asking for authority to drill on 160 acres identified in the red box, and that will basically be conducted in 2 tracks for economic purposes. And again, this is also in the application. The owners will start in phase 1 and then move to phase 2 from basically east to west. The owners have been advised that there's a great likelihood of presence of oil in this area. There are new wells that were recently drilled in this area, which have been successful wells. There are oil wells up in this area that have been drilled recently and also hit oil successfully. So we think the likelihood of drilling oil in these locations where we requested is quite likely. The owners are asking for a conditional use permit of 20 years. As far as the economics, and some of my gentlemen here tonight will address some of these issues, but in order to really get an operator involved to address the initial capital needed to bring wells in, bring equipment in to drill, to bring the equipment in to capture the oil, it's a significant investment. And we believe that 20 years is appropriate given the likelihood of development probably not completely reaching this area. If it does, great. My clients would eagerly sell the property tomorrow if the demand was there, if there were developers there knocking at their door. That's just not happening. And I think you'll hear from my additional gentleman here tonight that we'll address the safety issues. We disagree with staff's report on a lot of areas. That's why my clients have hired a petroleum engineer to address some of these safety issues and also to address the potential reserves in the area. One of the as in the response to the staff report, we have painstakingly gone through all of the staff's issues where staff had pointed out some of the negative potential impacts of drilling for oil, and we've addressed each of those issues. In addition, there's also a couple pages which address the golden rules with respect to approval of any conditional use permit. Those are specifically outlined as specifically required by your municipal code. We believe that we have satisfied all the procedural requirements for approval of this conditional use permit. We believe this is a viable means for the owners to generate income to pay the sewer assessments and bring them current and maybe even satisfy them ahead of time. My owner's primary goal is to sell this property for development. It's only secondary for developing this for oil operations. And again, like I said, The owners will be in control of those oil operations. At any time, they could stop, plug the wells, and sell the property for residential development. At this time, I would like to introduce Kenton Hub, who will address the reserve issues and some of the safety concerns that the staff had raised.
Good evening. My name is Kenton Hub. I'm a petroleum engineer out of Wichita, Kansas. I'm a licensed petroleum engineer in Kansas and Missouri. Just a little background on myself. I grew up in Richmond, Missouri, which is about the same distance on the other side of Kansas City from Gardner. My dad was a veterinarian, so I grew up in an agricultural environment. Was fortunate to go to school at the University of Missouri at Raleigh and get a petroleum engineering degree, and graduated in 1974. So I've been in the industry for 40 years and been exposed to things all over the country, and have been a Kansas petroleum engineer since 1979. I'm very familiar with most all of Kansas, particularly eastern Kansas operations. So hopefully tonight I can address some of the concerns that you might have, answer questions, and but just a little, some of the things, I assume you've all had a chance to read the report that I prepared, which like has been said by Michelle and by John, this area is loaded with existing oil wells. So there's, in my industry, a place to find oil is existing oil fields. So this area has potential. There's no development on the acreage that's being proposed to be drilled right now, but that's, this is the kind of production in this area would indicate that it ought to be tried. And so that's, I think, the emphasis of what Mr. Russell is trying to do. My review was for this immediate area and then also the whole township. The production in this area is really pretty good, particularly at today's oil prices. So the report that I prepared would indicate the reserve projection that I did, where I have roughly 84,000 barrels of oil potentially available to phase one and 100,000 barrels to phase two, is based on an initial well making 1.5 barrels a day and recovering a little over 5,000 barrels per well. Based on the wells in the area, that's probably very conservative. The production can be much better than that. There's some wells that have come in 5 barrels a day or better. The value based on my projection of 1.5 barrels a day starting rate for the producers for phase one is the net oil income, net revenue is $4 million, and phase two would be $5 million. There's been some talk about fracking and safety, and I may be better to maybe answer questions as best I can on that kind of thing, but this area does require fracking. These are tight sandstones that don't produce economical volumes without being fracked, and fracking's been around since before I was born. It's a procedure that's, we're becoming closely to being energy independent, which is, for me, I didn't think was ever going to happen. But we're getting close to doing it because of shale plays and things like that, which require fracking to happen. So the energy that this country has been able to develop would not have happened without fracturing. And I feel like it's a safe procedure. I'll be happy to address how it works and what it's meant to do. As far as safety, as far as the operations, I think it's been made known that there's wells all over town. You all know better than I do if there's been injuries or any problems associated with existing operations, but with it being so prolific, you all know better than I do about what's happened in the community. But it's like any other industry; it has things that happen, but as a rule, it's not a very I feel like it's a very safe operation.